Messi. Messi! Oh my goodness! Balotelli! Aguero! That is extraordinary! What a headshot! What a hit! Back of the net.
Happy Halloween. We are back for our annual Halloween storytelling bonus episode with myself, Killian Ginnity, and Connor Glennon. How are we doing, Connor?
I am very well. Currently at time of recording, Newcastle are 2-0 up against Chelsea, so I cannot complain, but I don't know what's scarier, the fact that we're going to be diving into some spooky tales on this one, or the fact that Man United are actually winning a game at the moment.
Trick or treat season is really in play right now. As you alluded to, we will be looking at some curses. Last year, I presented a whole array of haunted stadiums, witch doctors, loads of stuff. This year, you're going to tell me a story, and I'll tell you one. So, did you know that Liverpool had a curse?
Well, the only curse is their bloody fans, but we won't get into that. Well, what's the legitimate curse?
So, you say legitimate. Now, this is all hinged on the testimony of one Mr. Bruce Grobbler, who is...
Full-time mad bastard.
Yeah, in polite terms. So, he reckons that after Liverpool won the title in 1990, of which he was a part of, their last Premier League title for, it was nearly 30 years or 30 years.
On, yeah.
That they'd won it, and then in around 1992, he had a testimonial, and he was sponsored by an African lager, Zambezi.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if that's actually Zimbabwe or if it was. I'm not sure what part, but Zambezi. And they were obviously sending beer over for the testimonial because he was being sponsored by them.
Niche sponsorship. Let's just call it what it is.
Well, their form of sponsorship was even more niche because they sent a witch doctor with the lager to Anfield for the testimonial.
Okay.
Now, bear in mind, this story was told a couple of months before Jurgen Klopp got crowned Premier League champion with Liverpool. So it was coming in the context of maybe if this might happen.
Okay.
But it's also like, why did he wait till 2019 to say the story? Apparently this witch doctor arrived at all the beer and they were a bit like, that's funny and interesting. But he went around the posts and he put a goat tail and water on the posts of both sides of the pitch.
As you do.
Then he got a microphone and said, if you don't have the jungle man Bruce Grobbler here, you will not win the league again.
Brave.
So Grobbler, he ended up going back to South Africa. He went over to Canada and he came back. And it wasn't thought of. It just went through a very long, dry spell, a spell dominated by Man United, a spell dominated by the money of Chelsea. And Grobbler went back for a game. And he went down to the Kop end and he peed on the post because he believed that this was going to break the curse. But he got thrown out. He only got to do one end.
Oh, Christ.
He didn't get to do Anfield Road end. That was the night Steven Gerrard slipped against Chelsea, and they finished second that season.
No, this has to be a fib.
This was 2013-2014. He had peed on one side. He didn't get to do the other. They were so close to winning, and then Gerrard slipped.
And did he slip on the side that he didn't pee on?
I'm not too sure, but it unraveled.
Okay, now, I'm not a conspiracy guy. You know this about me. I like laughing at conspiracies, but that has me feeling all sorts of weird.
It's of all times to happen, and of all places for it to happen. And in 2018, 2019, Grobbelaar went back for a corporate game, a kick around with some companies, but he got to do it on Anfield. And the guy who invited him actually said to him, "You have to do the business today. This is your opportunity." So Brucey got a water bottle, poured the water bottle out, went into the toilet and peed in it.
Refilled the water bottle.
He did. And during the first half, he was down the cop end. And instead of taking drinks, he was pouring the water bottle on the posts. And then the second half, he went down to the Anfield end and did the same. That end of that year, they won the league.
Okay, now look. First time's a coincidence. Second time, there's some realness to that juju out there.
So, whatever, maybe it was just the freshness of the ammonia in his piss, or it was the breaking of the curse. But the witch doctor's curse was lifted, and the near 30-year wait for a Premier League title for Liverpool was ended.
So we need Bruce Grobbelaar up in Newcastle, spraying on both goals, and we might get a sniff of the title.
Well, as you say, like, it's one of them kind of like, it kind of does give you that little kind of like chill up the back, kind of like,
Yeah, first time you're kind of like, okay, whatever. If you left it there, I'm like, okay, it's funny, but like it's a coincidence. Second time round, I don't know. That really is kind of unnerving.
But Liverpool weren't the only team that was cursed. Who do you have to tell me about?
Now, as you know, on this podcast, we are a global podcast. We are an award-nominated podcast. And one of our favorite areas of the world to talk about is Asia. And we've talked to football agents who operate out there. We've talked to coaches and club owners out there. So I kind of found an Asian focus story that I thought might interest you. So,
Love that.
as we know, South Korea are an absolute Asian football powerhouse.
100%.
They've made 9 appearances at the World Cup since '86. They reached the semi-finals, if you remember, in 2002. Ireland could have beat them at that, but if we hadn't got wrongly done by Spain, but we move. And they got bronze at the 2012 London Olympics. So, they've had a very good run of things of late, but they have not lifted the Asian Cup since winning it in the first 2 editions of it, actually, in 1956 and 1960.
Like, that's a long time for a big team. Like, that'd be like Spain not winning the Euros for 60 years.
Or even like the Nations League, something, So they've qualified from the group stage at the kind of at recent tournaments in Qatar, and they've got big players like Heung-min Son from Tottenham, and among the superstitions of the South Koreans, of which there are many outside of football. So kind of despite South Korea being one of the most technologically advanced countries, many South Koreans remain superstitious and consult the likes of shamans for medical reasons, or just personal advice, really. And they wildly hold beliefs that include the likes of associating the number 4 with death, and that writing your name in red ink will bring bad luck, and even dreaming of pigs will invoke wealth. So they're open to these superstitions.
Yeah, like, it kind of sounds a little bit Irish. I think we can kind of.
I think there's a bit of the Mayo curse in there.
Yeah, it just has that kind of like I don't like. I think most people in Ireland would be skeptical, but if you heard a scream in the night, you'd presume it's a banshee.
yeah. So among one of their biggest superstitions is that the title drought is down to fake gold medals. Now, these fake gold medals. So I'm not talking about chocolate coins you'd get in your trick or treat. I'm talking about the medals that the Korean Football Association handed out to their players when they celebrated the second of their 2 wins in 1960, as that tournament was in South Korea. So massive thing for South Korea to win on home soil. Second tournament on the bounce. There's only been two of them. They're the talk of Asia from a footballing perspective.
Yeah.
But the medals turned out to be gold-plated lead. Many believe
the metal bite thing just get lead poisoning.
Well, you say that. Many of the players said if you rubbed it hard enough with your finger, it just kind of flaked off. So it was closer to those chocolate coins that I'm talking about. But many believe in South Korea that a corrupt official pocketed the money earmarked for the medals. But the ironic thing is South Korea's hopes of winning the tournament have gone down like a lead balloon ever since. They it's hard to believe, but again, it's kind of I'll give you a little bit more that kind of in your kind of, I suppose, second time round putting the water bottle on the post level. So the outraged players returned the fake medals and demanded that the KFA, the Korean Football Association, present them with real ones that weren't, metal or gold-plated lead. And they had to wait more than 50 years to receive them.
50?
Yeah, 50. So, a couple of the squad weren't around at this point. They passed on, unfortunately. So in 2014, the KFA finally made the pure gold medals for the 1960 winning team, and they could only contact three of the surviving footballers and family members for three more who had died. So 6 of 22 on a squad.
Yeah.
And they had this big do, and they presented them, and they kind of admitted what happened publicly for probably one of the first times, but at least on the public stage. So 6 medals are, I suppose, with family or actual players on the team. And then the following year, the team reached the Asian Cup final for the first time since 1988. But they still couldn't do it. They lost 2-1 to Australia in extra time. And the curse still lives on.
Still.
I don't know about you. Do you believe in this stuff?
I don't really, but like, if you were to be a believer in karma, fake gold medals and not getting another gold medal for yourself for nigh on 60 years is very karmic.
I'd be getting the CIA to find any living family member of these boys and getting them a real medal ahead of the next tournament.
I'd be getting a bottle of Bruce Gobbler's piss.
I think the next cup or the next Asian Cup is 2027. So they got a couple of years to either get Brucey's products or hand out some fresh gold medals.
Well, arguably, the current squad was their best chance of doing that, but like by the time that comes around, they won't have Heung-min Son, and like that's a massive loss. And I don't know if they have the kind of the talent to replace that. So we will see if the curse will rumble on.
I dare say that I think this curse will stumble on and on and on, like a steady stream of Brucey's. You know what?
Have you ever heard of Béla Guttmann?
I'd love to tell you yes.
Béla Guttmann was a Hungarian football coach who survived the Holocaust. He had a bit of a playing career, had been at an Olympics. He was a man to speak his mind. When he wasn't happy with the accommodation at the Olympics, he hung up dead rats around the place.
That's a statement.
Subtle.
Okay.
Subtle.
Let him know you're there.
Yeah. But he had an amazing mind for football. He popularized the 4-2-4.
Okay.
So that was his biggest innovation, and at that point, that was like very defensively minded. It was that kind of like WM kind of thing. Had been kind of the way it was. So you'd have 3-2-2-3, and so by just putting in what we would now consider a relatively modern shape, he really advanced things on. And he had a lot of managerial positions, but most famously, he had managed maybe AC Milan would probably be quite known. You know that there was that time anybody that's played like FIFA over the last couple of years, there's them legendary 3 Swedish strikers. They were when Sweden won the World Cup in the 50s. They were his strikers. Like
Okay.
they were the Swedish Triangle of Milan, and they were his.
Just that sounds like a movie in itself. The Swedish Triangle
Yeah.
of Milan.
Considering he was outspoken, like he left many of the clubs due to disputes. Like he left AC Milan with in dramatic circumstances, where in his final press conference he says, "I have been sacked, even though I am neither a criminal nor a homosexual. Goodbye."
Okay, wow.
But he was undeniably successful, even going over to Sao Paulo and winning a league with them, one of their first ones. But where his name is most synonymous with is Benfica. So he'd actually he'd gone to Portugal with Porto and won a league with them. And then he went over in 1959 to Benfica. And in his first year, he sacked 20 senior players.
How many did he have?
Not many more than that. But he brought through many young players and bought young players, including a young Mozambique striker who would go on to define the era, be arguably one of the greatest footballers of all time, and lead him to great success, being Eusebio.
Oh, wow.
So, whether you agree with his methods, he knew what
unearthed
he
the
was doing.
talent. Yeah.
And his impact was immediate. They won the league. They won it actually twice in a row. And I think it was in his second season, he led them to the European Cup final and won, which is incredible considering the 5 previous European Cups were won by Real Madrid with the likes of Di Stefano and Puskas.
5 on the trot.
5 on the trot. I believe this is the first 5 they won.
Wow.
So Benfica was the first ones to take that title from them. And then they did it again the next year. In 1961, they bet Barcelona 3-2. In 1962, they bet Real Madrid 5-3.
It doesn't hurt having Eusebio on your team.
Well, when you're the one that put Eusebio there, you can take all the credit. So obviously, that's immensely successful. So he asked for a pay rise, and thereafter electing a new president. And the club refused. To which, there's no proof of this, but if you ask anybody, this is how the story goes. Gutman stormed out, shouting, "Not in 100 years from now will Benfica ever be a European champion."
And let me guess.
Whether or not he truly believed it, his prophecy has cast a long shadow over the Portuguese team. Since he left, so he left in 1962. He did go back in, I believe it was 1965, but to much less success. But since his initial departure, Benfica have reached 10 European finals. 8 in the European
and to get to 10 European finals is nothing to be sniffed at.
2 in the UEFA Cup Europa League. And they've lost every single one. They even lost to Chelsea in the Europa League, the year that they done the Europa League and then Champions League.
Yeah.
It's borderline supernatural because there's been many times that luck has not gone their way in ways that would surprise you. Before the substitutions were brought in the game, their key midfielder got injured early on and missed the rest of the game. So they were playing against 11 men and they only had 10 for most of the game. And that 11 men they were playing against was Man United with George Best and Bobby Charlton. And this is when Man United won their first European Cup.
Okay.
Like, even in the 2014 Europa League final, they lost on penalties. And at that time, do you remember Luis Sau, their captain, the centre-back, the Brazilian bally dude? He was there from 2003, and he said, luck was not on our side. There was almost no way for the ball to go in. It was as if every time they were getting a chance, it would go against them. Maybe this is psychological. Maybe it's this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that if you believe it, it's not going to happen. Eusebio believed it, though. He believed it very much, because in the 1990 European Cup final, it was Benfica versus AC Milan, and it was in, I believe, Vienna, which is where Bela Gutmann was buried.
Okay.
So Eusebio visited his grave and begged for his forgiveness. And they still lost.
I mean, you can't write this stuff.
The curse is said to last until 2062.
Get betting, boys.
So they have another 38 odd years. But it's one of the longest and seemingly most accurate curses that I've come across. But who knows? Do you believe it?
I think I do. And the fact that until you said Eusebio went knocking by his grave, I was like, okay. But
This is something that is literally from when it was pronounced, shall we say, that it was felt. One, because of who was saying it. This would be like Sir Alex Ferguson coming out and putting a curse on Man United. Like, you would take notice of that. But the effects of it were almost immediate. Within 4 years, they were losing finals on the trot in the European Cup. And the fact that they've never even won one of the, for want of a better word, lesser European Cups, considering how many of them there is now, it's a little bit chilling.
I will say a part of me with these things is the same thing with, the Mayo for Sam brigade. I do think part of it is, the lore of this gets in players' heads and they use it as an excuse, but it's definitely food for thought, my man.
Well, on that bombshell, our Ouija board to the podcast world comes to an end for another spooky season. Let us know if there's any other curses we missed, or any other scary stories that we should know about. Connor, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, dude.
Messi. Oh my goodness! Balotelli.